Howdy-ho.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Looking
Good.
forward to another day.
Oh yeah, I'm enjoying the nice weather of today.
Oh yeah, yesterday was awesome. We were out working and playing. It was a blast.
Oh
The
yeah,
ball.
it's. I guarantee you, in summer this would be freezing to us, but it sure feels nice now.
Sure does, yeah. I'm curious how many people will attract today. It's kind of a hot button topic, but I guess kind of everything we do is a little bit of a hot button topic.
You could say that.
That's the reason we do it.
Yeah.
Hey, we have person number one. I can't see your name yet. Welcome, person number one. All right, you want to go ahead and get started into it then?
Yeah.
All right. This is the Wake Up America podcast. Welcome, guys, and everyone for coming on. Thank you so much. We're a conservative political talk show. We just talk about current events, stuff that's happening, opinions, yada yada yada. We like debate, and that's why we're on here on stereo with the live format. So please keep it clean if you're going to leave comments and messages. Keep it clean, keep it smart, stuff like that. Today we're talking about the $15 minimum wage and the Biden proposal, COVID relief bill. So that'll be what we're going on today. So I'm thinking, go ahead and get started right on into it.
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, the current COVID relief bill that they are proposing has a bunch of extra stuff in it that is completely unnecessary and wrong to put in a bill under the name of COVID. And one of those things is that the Democrats are trying to get a $15 minimum wage put into the bill so that if it passes, that would be the new minimum wage standard.
Yeah, federally required across the country. First off, if you ask me, I think there could be a further debate about states' rights and stuff like that, because that seems like a overstepment of the federal government. But just today we're just really talking about this $15 minimum wage. I mean, it's got just this one little thing that people are. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in that COVID bill, but this is the $15 minimum wage is something that people are openly supporting across the country. Mostly people on the left, or I would say probably exclusively people on the left. And it's got some really serious ramifications, kind of ramifications that will devastate the country should this ever happen. These kind of things will have some very immediate and prolonging effects should a $15 minimum wage be passed into law.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that it is, if it gets passed, it would be so terrible is the fact that we already have an economy that has been hurt severely because of the lockdown. And then on top of that, a $15 minimum wage is something that will just hurt the economy even more. It is not something that brings overall good to basically anyone.
Yeah. Or going back 2 years ago to the strong economy that Trump had created. I mean, even if we had a $15 minimum wage then, that would have had that. I mean, all of the work that Trump had put in to better the economy probably would have been erased overnight just because of how serious it is. Everyone really, since stereo is an 18 and up format, I would assume that everyone in here has gone through high school. Anyone listening to this recording has gone through high school, taken the basic economics class. Things like supply and demand and crap like that. So when we're talking about this, we're just going to be, referencing simple supply and demand, and I'm not going to be, talking about how that works because I'm assuming all you guys know what we're talking about. We're going into the economic side of this. If you the minimum wage of the wage, or pretty much the labor wages of every company, is driven by the supply and demand, right? Simple thing.
Right.
But especially in reference to COVID and the effects that it has had on the economy, a $15 minimum wage means that every country, or sorry, I can't say every because it would just be most businesses would have to pay a $15 minimum wage to all their employees. When you raise the price of minimum wage $15, some people have the opinion that that doesn't affect the economy at all, and that just means that everyone gets paid $15, and they don't
Right.
even take into
Good.
account things like inflation.
Yeah. And there are a lot of things wrong with the $15 minimum wage. Personally, I think there are a lot of things wrong with I think it's $7.50 is the federal minimum wage. There and one of the reasons that a $15 minimum wage is so terrible and not economically sound is because, frankly, a lot of jobs are not worth $15 an hour. The guy flipping burgers at McDonald's should not get paid $15 for flipping burgers.
Yeah, $15 minimum wage is the pay that I received at a company I worked for after being with them or actually, I mean, I was only making $13 an hour, and I've been with them for 3 years and gotten raises. So I mean, $15 minimum wage right off the bat, and we're talking about non-inflation right here, right? Working at the current value of the dollar. Um, that is a lot. That's just a lot of money to be paying for a base job that can be nothing. I mean, like that means that like your trash guy is getting paid $15 minimum wage, which is more than, like I said, a lot of people make that have been working at companies for a while or doing stuff like that. So it's just. And then you can go in further, like I was referencing just a minute ago, and talking about what will happen with inflation. If you raise the $15 minimum wage, just keep it real simple here, those companies, in order to make a profit, because companies work to make a profit, they have to be able to make a profit back somehow. If they are now paying a larger percentage of what they were making, they're going to have to, raise the prices of what they're selling in order to make up for the profit. And they could raise their prices, or they could just let a bunch of people go, be saving more money that way. Things like that. So there could be mass layoffs. There could be a massive raise in prices, which would result in inflation, which would further create a higher issue. So these are all things that should be taken into account, and it should be worth noting, like Spencer said, the minimum wage is I think it's like $7.50. I'm not sure if that's exactly the number it is, but that $15 minimum wage is double what the current minimum wage is. That is a crazy high increase in value.
Yeah, and the way of looking at it is that if you have a $15 minimum wage, you have a $15 Whopper that you're buying, or you have a $15 McRib or whatever, because companies have to make a profit or else they're going to go out of business. In order to make a profit while still obeying a federal law that says you have to pay $15, one of two things are going to happen. Either they're going to raise their prices because then they'll be able to continue making a profit, or they're going to lay off people. And it's, for a
Layoffs are
lot,
only a temporary solution.
right. Yeah. And most companies are probably going to do a combination of those two. They might raise the prices, lay off a few people, and then suddenly you've got a lot more people that are out of work. And they say, well, that wouldn't happen because minimum wage is a living wage and all this other stuff that they say. But the problem is that people that are going to get laid off because the company can't pay for them is going to be the unskilled and the very lowest bottom part of every company, whether that's the people working at the drive-through at McDonald's or the guy who does various things. They're going to lay off the people that would need that money the most.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's so ultimately there is no way of looking at this logically that um, it doesn't result in a worse economy and turning out worse for people across the board, not just a small group of people. And I did look.
Yeah,
I looked it up. The minimum wage is $7.25.
yeah, I just saw that too. And real quick before we listen to some of these messages here, I want to make a comparison. California right now has some of the highest unemployment rates of anywhere in the country. In California, you go to cities like Los Angeles or San Francisco, and you'll see large amounts of people living on the street because they can't get a job because they either are uneducated or various amount of reasons. They're homeless. They live on the streets, and so you'll see tents all over these big cities. Even though they're not portrayed like that in movies, that's the reality. California, effective January 1st of this year, has a $14 an hour minimum wage. Um, and just to make a little comparison here for everyone, because you guys have probably all participated in having a vehicle and the costs that are associated with it. The dollar per gallon for basic unleaded gasoline in California is like $3.50 right now. There's a little variation here in the chart. It kind of goes up and down. But it varies from like 3.26 to like 4.45. So you got a little bit of a variation there, but that's really high. I mean, think about the gas prices where you live. I'm assuming most people don't have prices like that since you don't have such a high um, minimum wage and other aspects like that that really destroy a state's economy. So, take that with a grain of salt. You have 3 messages here already this morning, so we'll go ahead and listen to the first one if you're okay with that, Spencer.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so I just got here and I just read the title. I have no idea what y'all are talking about or if y'all have already talked about this, but if the $15 minimum wage thing goes through, dude, inflation is going to be so bad. Like, it is going to ruin anyone that makes decent money. Like, to be wealthy, you're going to have to be a solid millionaire. Solid. And it's so stupid that they think that's a good decision, bro. Like, I live towards the south, and minimum is $7.25, but the cost of living here is so low. If they raise it to 15, they're gonna have to make everything way more expensive. It's too much. I really think they should just leave it.
Yeah,
exactly. So
that's a really good point. Thanks for keeping your comment clean. We really appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you raise the pay of everyone to a certain level, then everything else in the economy has to adjust in an upwards direction, which means that house prices and food prices and everything is going to go up. And because of that, we're going to hit a point where there's just not enough money to go around. And then the government is going to say, well, we'll print some more and it'll be fine. We've never seen the collapse of any other country's economy by just printing more money.
Yeah, that's perfect there, Spencer. Yeah, printing more money is not the solution to our problems, but it's what they're going to try to do. And if you think about the historical instances in history where inflation has risen drastically due to one thing or another, a good example of a big effect on the economy was the Great Depression. And should a $15 minimum wage have to happen and everyone's prices of living go up and everyone's because that means that, like, also let's make it real quick, the money that you have now would be devalued significantly from the current value that it is right now. So you are all, as soon as the $15 minimum wage goes up, everyone in the country becomes a little more poor because the price of living and the value of what you own just went up high because it just went down lower because the inflation is now higher. So that's something to take into account. And the effects of this, like me and Spencer have said already, they could be mass layoffs, that's a very conceivable effect. But there will also probably be a raise in prices for pretty much everything that you use, from your regular apple at the grocery store to the gas that you put in your car. There will be large shifts of companies that could conceivably move overseas to China and other countries in order to try to maintain their business because they need to be able to produce products still, but they are no longer able to do it with American citizens because they do not have the ability to employ such a workforce because of the high minimum wage. And these all could culminate in the effects similar to a Great Depression, until there was ways to combat that. So these are real things that should be taken in. These are not like we talk a lot about politics and things like this, and sometimes we talk about moral ramifications and things like that. But this is like this will affect everybody, no matter what your opinion is. Period. Serious consequence that will hurt the nation drastically.
Yeah, and we'll take a couple more of these, but I have some opinions about the minimum wage that personally I don't think there should be a minimum wage, but we'll take some more messages and then we can come back to that.
Yeah.
So have you guys just gone and looked at places that have done the $15 minimum wage? I believe that's the case up here in Canada, or at least in some of the provinces. So there should be some good reference material in terms of looking at what's happened with inflation and prices of food and everything else to directly compare to see what those effects are.
I'm gonna guess that he had already sent that out before I referenced California. So yes, California is a perfect example. High minimum wage, high price of living, lots of poverty, lots of unemployment. Everything is more expensive. Yeah, great example there. That's not what we need happening to the whole country. We don't need California being repeated everywhere. No, thank you. Go ahead, take another message real quick here.
What is the minimum wage in America? Like, I'm in Canada, and and in Canada, like, the minimum wage is like $15 or $14. So what is it in America?
So it is $6.25 an hour in America currently.
Yep.
And yeah, that's
states can raise or lower. States can change that. They can raise it higher, but they can't make it lower.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how. I haven't done great study into the economy of California. If I'm being completely blunt, I don't really care. Yeah, sorry, not California. Well, I meant Canada. Canada's economy is just vastly different from the U.S. I mean, Canada is not the country that leads that has brought insane technological innovation and has such an economy and free market and crap like that. So they are not the same country that we have. So it's difficult to make comparisons to a country that has completely different, has different government, different economy, different rules, laws, regulations, crap like that America does not reflect. So we don't make comparisons to Canada.
I would still say that America is doing better with a lower minimum wage, though. Than Canada, even though we have a lot more foreign involvement in terms of our expenses, whether we're essentially the police of the world, so that takes a lot of money. But I think in general we are doing better than just about any other country economically.
Honestly, we should be helped. We should be paid for policing the world, then we can stop.
I agree.
Maybe make off a little bit of our debt.
Yeah.
Ran a bit in there. Also, it's worth noting the average. Okay, for instance, in several states, McDonald's, right? Simple, basic, like part-time high school kind of job, right? Just doesn't require like really any education. Doesn't require know-how. Just 10 minutes of training by a manager, and boom, you can make sandwiches and throw them out all day, right? A lot of McDonald's across the country have $11 wages for just the basic job. So that's with the federal minimum wage being $7.25 and they pay $11 an hour, you're already making pretty good money. But because they pay $11 an hour and it's not a federally mandated minimum wage, inflation does not go up because they pay more. If everyone chooses to pay more, it's different, because then that means that they are able to pay that and that their business can handle paying $15. Let's say everyone in the country were right now to choose to go to $15 minimum wage. Well, that would mean that every business in the country is capable of supporting a $15 wage for $15 an hour wage for their employees. If they are not capable to do that and they are told by the government that they must transfer to that, well, then that's where you get inflation and things like that. Like even McDonald's, they cannot pay $15 minimum wage, otherwise they would be paying it probably, because, or maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. But they pay $11 an hour, and that's still significantly higher than a 7.25 federally mandated. So important things to make. The whole country is not living in poverty like a lot of people try to, push onto everyone, where the whole country needs more money. We need to increase the minimum wage because everyone's living poor, when actually a substantially small portion of our nation is living in relative poverty. And it's also worth noting, when we're talking about economics and poverty and stuff like that, because that's why people want a higher minimum wage. The poverty, the quality of life for those who are impoverished, or quote unquote impoverished, in the U.S. is living like kings compared to those who are impoverished and still making it through every single day. In countries like third world countries, they're living, they're still making it through every day, and they're taking care of themselves, taking care of a family, and those who are impoverished here in the U.S., living on welfare or not, these are people who are living way better than those individuals.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that in America, our standard of living is so much higher than any other country, that someone here living in the middle class would be looked upon with absolute envy by anyone else in a less industrialized country, where they look and they say, oh my gosh, you have a house and you have running water and you have all these nice things, you have 2 cars. So
TV.
a
TV.
Right, you have TV, and you have the time to sit down and watch entertainment. So our poor is a relative term in terms of compared to other countries. And now is actually a good time. I can talk about this. You tell me what you think, Colson. I personally would be okay with no minimum wage at all by the federal government. And partly that's because I think that a minimum wage should be allowed to be set by the states. If California wants to set its minimum wage at 14, but Illinois only wants to set it at 5, I think that's fine. I think partly it's up to the states to do what they want with that. And I think that the federal minimum wage should be $0. And the reason I say that is because if they set it at that, it allows for much more flexibility and natural competition to come out. Because if McDonald's is saying, well, I'll pay you $1 an hour, then I'm not going to go work there, because I know that it's not worth my time. And so it naturally pushes people to set their minimum wage, or not, sorry. It naturally pushes companies to put their wages higher and higher to compete for the people that want those jobs. So personally, I think it's okay to have a much lower minimum wage, because then natural competition will win out in the end and will give people higher wages just by the fact that there is competition for those jobs, rather than a guaranteed, okay, whatever job I have, I will get $7.25 an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, you have states across the country that have various economies, and their economies revolve around different products or things. You have states like in the breadbasket in the Midwest that produce, corn and a lot of agriculture, right? You aren't going to be getting a lot of agriculture out in the middle of the desert in Utah or New Mexico or Arizona. You aren't going to be seeing a lot of cornfields popped up with stuff like that. That's just not the same kind of economy. They have a different economy. So states have varying economies based on their geographical location, their climate. A whole slew of different factors affect a state's economy, and so a federally mandated minimum wage, I do agree, should not exist at all. And then especially not a $15 minimum wage. That should not exist. I don't even believe a $15 minimum wage should be mandated by a state, and a good example of why it shouldn't be is mandated is California with the crap that we've already talked about already. They're living in, there's a lot of homeless people, a lot of layoffs and stuff like that. These are just factors to take into effect. And most things that we talk about on this show were like, we recently talked about the Equality Act and how bad that is, and a lot of these things California has already done. So California is kind of the gold standard for if you don't want bad stuff to happen, look at California. They've already done it and see what happened to them. So
yeah, and I mean, California shows how well some of that has worked with their increasing poverty and increasing homelessness population.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that California has become the test bed for a lot of liberal leftist policies, and it has paid the price. There are a ton of businesses that have moved out of California. Elon Musk, who brought millions of dollars into their economy, left because he couldn't stand the policies that were getting pushed on him.
Yeah, the California had a high minimum wage before the beginning of this year. I think it was somewhere in the $13 range. $13 minimum wage, and then it was various for different size companies. But then we also know that I think it was 75% of businesses, storefront businesses, closed their doors from COVID in Los Angeles alone. Am I right there, Spencer? I feel like that's right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I feel like that's it. I might be off. Someone correct me if I'm off. I feel like the number was 75%. I can do some looking for that and find that in a little bit. But yeah, so you got just we don't need relative poverty happening across the country. A $15 minimum wage will not help anybody. A lot of leftists, they kind of believe, hey, we're going to be decreasing poverty. We're going to be helping people make money again. They're going to make more money. We're going to make more money ourselves. And then the reality is that, basic economics teaches, economics 101 taught in high school teaches that that's actually not the reality, that the effect will be that this will have vast effects on the businesses. They'll have to raise their prices. They'll have to lay off people to compensate while they're trying to adjust. And maybe they'll just continually lay off, or they'll just have mass layoffs. Mass layoffs are a guarantee. Higher prices are a guarantee. And a situation across the country similar to that of the Great Depression is a distinct possibility. Anyone that doesn't believe me, go look up some of the conditions that resulted in the Great Depression. There was stark contrast to the effects of a $15 minimum wage. So things to take in mind.
And the only businesses that are going to currently afford a $15 minimum wage, if that were implemented immediately, the only businesses that are going to be able to afford that are the big businesses, whether that's Amazon, especially. I know that I believe they already have an internal wage at 15 of their minimum. But the only companies that are going to be able to effectively still do this with a higher minimum wage are the big companies. And then all the small companies, the local store, the local barber, the local whatever, all these small shops are not going to be able to compete, and they are more than likely going to go out of business because they can't afford to pay this, as well as their utilities and the supply and stock that they have to get.
Yeah, let's take Amazon's $15 internal wage there real quick for a bit of evidence, and you can compare that to any other business in the country that has a $15 minimum wage. And you can look at it this way, okay? Let's say that these businesses have $15 minimum wage. Some people will be like, oh, well, that's just, it's not going to affect them, so we should just stop considering them at all. We shouldn't even talk about them. let's think of it this way, okay? In terms of supply and demand, and the materials it requires to make products, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think will happen when the price of every single good in the country goes up because the minimum wage goes up? That means that all these businesses that might have been unaffected by a $15 minimum wage in the beginning will now be affected because the cost of them to produce goods has just gone up. So these are more effects that will have further consequences. A $15 minimum wage will conceivably affect every single business in the entire country. With that leaving out absolutely none. I can't think of any business that would be unaffected by a $15 minimum wage. Everyone has a tie to wages and a tie to the economy, and changing the economy on such a drastic scale will have consequences.
Yeah, and it's going to have a much worse effect for those smaller businesses than the bigger ones.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead. We have a couple more messages here.
Yeah.
Just want to make it known, $1 million in Cali, where the minimum wage is 14. $1 million can get you an apartment. It's a 2-bedroom apartment and at a suite. You can't get a house with $1 million. It's ridiculous. Inflation's already taken effect there. That's why it's so, I don't know why it's so populated up there. When you could come, I don't know, further away from that area. Like I said earlier, I live towards the south, and $1 million could buy you maybe 100 acres. $1 million could get you a 2-story house. Basically looks like a mansion, and it's just the minimum, or the base pay minimum wage is $7.25, and it's just, if you raise it up, you're gonna get to afford an apartment. Like, that's why so many people are homeless. You've got, I think it's called Skid Row in LA. That's literally a spot that they've blocked off for the homeless because of how many there are.
Yeah, I just looked this up right here. LA has an average home price of $816,000 for an average house. That's insane. And also, people may say, "Oh, well, that means that they can still afford to live in a house," and that's not necessarily true, because you'd have to still be paying for your life and your cost of living. The utilities would have to be taken into effect, and if a house costs upwards of $800,000, then you're talking, what, the rest of it, if not more, will go into your bills in the soon thereafter and stuff like that. So people with $1 million cannot afford to buy a house in LA or San Diego.
Right.
And the apartment rent is $2,800 average a month. That's insane.
Gosh.
Most places in the country, it's like 500.
Wow.
So
That's
that's obscene.
And that's a really great example. A house in the Midwest may cost, we'll say, $300,000, and you're paying that off for 30 years. But you have a lower wage that you're getting paid. But as soon as you upgrade to that higher wage in California, sure, you're making more money, but you also have to pay more for everything. So in the end, it doesn't benefit you. You're either equal, or you're even worse off than you would have been with a lower wage.
Yeah, that's what inflation is. The value per dollar goes down. So when you have a higher minimum wage, the value per dollar that you own goes down. So let's say that, right now, let's say the minimum wage happens tomorrow, right? And let's say someone's a millionaire living in whatever state, right? All of a sudden, let's say they're going from a $7.25 an hour to a $15 an hour. That means that their relative value is going to go down. I don't have the time to do the math for that. That would take a minute. But their relative value per dollar would go down substantially, because. So let's say if you have $1 million, right? By the time you're done, let's just go ahead and throw in a ballpark number, since it would be what is that, 100% increase? Yeah, 100% increase. Let's go ahead and say your value would decrease by 100%. That means that $1 million would now be worth $500,000. So you would need to have $2 million in order to be equal to $1,000 that you had before the increase in minimum wage. Things to take into account. Everyone's value in the country would immediately go down. And then everyone's wages would go up, and then that wouldn't actually help anybody at all, because they would all be living in harsher conditions that would require that a lot of people would be living in even harsher conditions than having to work for their money again, because they wouldn't have a job after the mass layoffs that would happen across the entire nation.
Yeah, and just going back to the California example real quick, my I have a house that is about 4,000 square feet, and we got it for $200,000. Whereas if it were the same house in California, it would have cost over $1 million just to get the exact same house.
Yeah, absolutely. Got 5 more messages here real quick, and we're going to try and make sure we get to all these before we end today, guys. So go ahead and listen to another one
here. Yeah, and like I had mentioned before, the $15 minimum, like I said, they've tried that up here in Canada. Lots of things have gone up. It's hard to tell right now if it's 100% related to that minimum wage hike, or if, other factors like COVID are playing a big factor into it. But, the price of food has gone up. Housing hasn't necessarily gone up because of it. But with that $15 minimum wage, it's that attempt to bring everyone up to a minimum bottom level, right? To get them into an area where they think, okay, they're going to be, at minimum lower middle class, contributing to the economy. It's not going to, it might lift some people up, but if companies don't want to hire, that minimum wage doesn't matter anyways. And the only people that, even if they do continue to keep it at $15 and continue to employ people and bring a little bit of the
I want to cover what he said real quick when he made that mention there. He said that the attempt is to bring everyone up to a higher standard of living. And that's true. That's what a lot of the left is trying to attempt to do. Let me make a comparison real quick here. Bringing everyone to the same level of living, that's called socialism. You want to make more money? You better work for your money. That's called capitalism. That's the economy we live in the U.S. You want to work for your money, get off your lazy butt and do something.
Capitalism says that, we'll give you all an equal starting point, right? That's called equality. But socialism and trying to get everyone at the same end result, where everyone's the same at the end, no matter what they did to get there, is called equity.
Yeah, exactly. So a $15 minimum wage in America, that means, sorry, not $15 minimum, you bring everyone up to the same value. Equality means that everyone has the same opportunity to improve, which is what exists right now in the country, despite what everyone's going to say about race or gender or religion. I don't care what you're going to say. Everyone is equal in the country, period. There's no racist laws, no sexist laws. I'm not even going to go into that. So we have, everyone in the U.S. has the equal opportunity to achieve wealth or stuff. To make an analogy here, if everyone would like to contradict what I'm saying right now, before you leave a response or before you ever talk to me again about that, go ahead and look up on Google or something how many millionaires or more have come out of the lower middle class, or even the low class, being poor and stuff like that. I'll give you a good example. Elon Musk. That dude was pretty stinking poor before he made his wealth, and he made his wealth by working hard for it. So now you got guys like anyone who's on YouTube knows Mr. Beast. Dude routinely does like $100,000 giveaways and crap like that. And he lived in a squatter apartment until he made his money through patience and hard work. So anyone who wants to make that analogy to me, go ahead.
80% of America's current millionaires are first-time rich, or are first-generation rich, which means they grew up in a poor family and worked their way into a millionaire status, right? That is pretty amazing to be able to say that you're a millionaire. 80% of those people worked up from basically nothing to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Taking a message here.
So, do you think the politicians are so stupid that they don't realize the economic aspects of this? Or do you think they're just trying to buy votes with people who are too stupid themselves to realize what's going to happen?
I
think it's a combination of both.
I think it's a combination of both, where they haven't been in touch with the real economy for so long that they don't understand the consequences of this, and they're trying to get people's votes because, oh, look, I raised your minimum wage. Aren't you going to pay for, or aren't you going to vote for me? And I think there's a third reason on top of that. And you can say what you want about this, anyone that's listening. And Colson, you can tell me your thoughts. It is much easier to come in to a disaster and say, I'll save you from this disaster. And people are going to accept your help no matter what it is, right? If I'm drowning and someone has a tiny little floaty, a tiny little rubber duck, and say, well, I'll give you this since you're in trouble, then, I'm going to take that because at least it'll slightly increase my chances of not drowning. And I think a lot of this is politicians are wanting us to get into a situation where the economy is so bad, right? After the CCP virus has led to lockdowns and with $15 minimum wage, I think a lot of them want to get to the economy to get to a point where it's so terrible that they say, "Oh, give us the power to, to regulate or to do this or that, and then we'll fix it for you." I think some of this is them trying to gather power towards themselves.
Yeah, so I think it falls into those three categories, whether it's trying to gain power, trying to get votes, or they're just plain stupid. But I actually think there's another fourth category that bridges a couple of those ones, and that's that some of these people are just straight up socialist or believe that the U.S. should not stay the way it is, and they're working for a socialist, communist government. So yeah, like Sanders, Kamala Harris, individuals like that who are just straight up socialists. These are Pelosi, Schumer. These are people who are working for revote, but they're working for revote and for destroying the American way of life. So yeah, that's where I come from. That message here real quick.
So overall, I am pro the increase of minimum wage, and my reasoning behind that is simply that it has not kept up with inflation. We know that the last time that the federal minimum wage was increased was back in 2009, and we know that from 2009 till today that the federal minimum wage has not indexed for inflation, and its purchasing power has dropped considerably. Now, I understand the gentleman's concern that the minimum wage would increase the price of consumer goods, but the price of consumer goods has increased regardless of minimum wage increase. And the reason behind that is because usually these bigger corporations are going to pass on 100% of their labor cost increases to the consumer. So it sounds like that specific issue needs to be addressed rather than ignoring the idea that the minimum wage has not kept up with inflation, period.
Right.
So yeah, prices do vary. Yeah, prices do vary based on. Sorry, Spencer.
Fine.
Prices do vary based on they might rise due to a company, but that's due to competition in the economy. So that's a little different. And when you made the analogy, that the last raise in minimum wage was 2009. It was July 24th, 2009. Is $7.25 for all covered non-exempt workers. Before that, the price was $6.55. Before that, it was $5.85, $5.15, $4.75. That was in 1996. So then it further goes on. You can find this chart online. Just search up federal minimum wage history. It's on the dol.gov website. You can find this chart here. But let it be known that these are all dollar, and while there may have been a different value in inflation between these different ones, like the economy had different inflation values, stuff like that. This is a 100% increase. So actually, it's over 100% because it's going from 725 to 15. If it were 750, it would be a 100% increase. That is almost twice current value. So 665 to 725 is a vastly different increase than $15. So if they were raising the price to, let's say that same number was let's say they're raising it to $8. One second, let me do the math real quick here. Crap. Sorry.
You're
If they're
fine.
raising it $0.7, okay, then we could have a different conversation about the effects, and I probably wouldn't even care because it wouldn't even hit my radar that much. Now, I probably wouldn't be happy about it because me and Spencer do believe in no minimum wage. But if it was a $0.7 case of 70 cent increase on the hour, then that would be vastly different than the now 100% increase, two times as much that we're getting with a $15 minimum wage. The consequences of that will be vastly superior to the consequences of a 70 cent increase in the minimum wage. And before that, it was about 70 cents the time before that too. 70 cents the time before that. So it's 70 cents from 1997 to 2007, 2008, 2009 were all 70 cent increases. And now we're doing a $7.75 increase. So that's something you should take into mind. And I'm not trying to bash you, enthusiasts, because I enjoy you being on the show, and you do have some good points that there wasn't a vast amount of change and consequences in the past, but this will be very different.
Well, and I think you have some very good points, the enthusiast, about inflation going up and wages not necessarily aligning with that. And my basic thinking on that is, again, I don't believe in any minimum wage, but I think that the way to solve that inflation is not by introducing a higher minimum wage, which will then introduce even more inflation. I just don't think that is the right solution to the problem of inflation, is not to increase the minimum wage, which will then introduce more inflation on prices of goods.
Yeah, the nuances of trying to reduce inflation after it has already occurred are significantly different than the nuances of trying to prevent inflation. So preventing inflation is pretty as simple as we're describing right here. Just don't want inflation, well then don't make that law that will increase inflation. But once inflation has occurred, well now you got a whole slew of other things that have to happen. That's why the Great Depression was hard to counteract, and it took a while, because there was a lot that had to happen in order to bring the economy back, back into equilibrium without collapsing it. So without completely destroying the U.S. economy, even though it was pretty close to that. These are things taken out. Like I said, this is a $7.75 increase, which is a lot higher on the hour than a 70 cent increase.
Yeah, it's such a huge jump that if we had reached this over a period of time by doing those increases, I still think we would have higher inflation and things would be worse. But this jump to 15 is such a huge shock. It will, if it passes, it would be such a huge shock to the economy that I don't think it could handle it.
Honestly, I'd like to see where someone decided that a $15 minimum wage is a smart thing to do, because it kind of looks like a number that someone just pulled out of their rear and said, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do."
15
I can't.
Number.
Huh?
I said 15 sounds like a nice number. It should do.
Yeah, 15 sounds like a nice number. Let's just go ahead and do that. I can't see any evidence whatsoever that would lead anyone to believe that such a vast increase over the current minimum wage would lead to positive things, except for the fact that someone could say, "I increased the minimum wage 2 times what it was, and look, the economy's destroyed now." You're welcome.
All right.
Take another message here, guys.
Yeah, one thing that could be another example is in a really highly populated area, such as like I was born in Hawaii, somehow ended up in Alabama, sadly. But I think a gallon of milk there is like $12 or something like that, and then in Alabama, a gallon of milk is like $3. It's like you're going to have to raise the price of everything, and then like y'all have said multiple times, you're not gonna be able to do anything about it. You're gonna have to either make more or pay more. There's no other option.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I know part of Hawaii's cost is just because it's an island and a lot of stuff has to be shipped there. But I know that a lot of it comes from the fact that it is a very democratic state.
Yeah. Democratic states have problems pretty much universally.
Yeah.
They always have issues. Okay, getting a message in here. Thank you for your comments, guys. Thank you for keeping them clean. Thank you for keeping them smart.
Yep.
So I do have two critiques with the raising of the minimum wage. Number one is that I don't think it's particularly effective in helping people clear the poverty line. I think subsidizing those communities with direct policies works better than raising the minimum wage. And number two is the increase of automation industry. I think that a lot of these corporations are going to use the minimum wage increase as an excuse to create robotic and artificial intelligence as a way to reduce human intervention and reduce human labor, and therefore removing those jobs from the industry and taking a lot of people out of work.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it'd be an excuse. I'd say it'd be a requirement. People that are running high industrial processes, like car manufacturing, stuff like that, they would have to switch to a lot less human human labor because they can't pay it anymore.
Right, and you actually see this happening even in the fast food market. McDonald's and various other fast food places have those kiosk stands where instead of going up to a person to order, you just tap a screen because that's cheaper for them. And a lot of jobs are going to be lost if you increase the wage to just automation, because it's going to be a lot cheaper for companies to do automation than it is to have them hire a bunch of people at $15 an hour.
Yep, absolutely. And what you were mentioned in the beginning of what you said there, enthusiast, when you talked about raising the poverty line, I believe the way to raise the poverty line is for people not to be lazy. A lot of poverty, a lot of people who live in poverty also live on welfare. They live on government money, and they don't do a lot, or they do nothing at all, and they don't care about getting out of it for whatever reason. I believe if you don't want to be poor, work the skin off your bone every single day until you're not. You have examples of parents who immigrated from other countries to the U.S. and then worked one job or two job every day to support their family, and those are parents that know the value of being in this country and the rights and liberties that they have versus where they came from. They understand that they have the ability to do this and the safety that is inherent to them in this country, and that didn't exist before. If anyone wants the best example of poverty, look at our immigrants. You got people coming in from Mexico who are. I mean, like I have met Mexicans. Those Mexicans are hard workers. I spend time. I spend a lot of time in construction sites due to my family. And I can tell you right now, Mexicans are some of the hardest workers you will ever see. I'm not saying that Americans are lazy or anyone else is lazy. Just Americans, especially immigrants, that are, people that are actually immigrants, not sons of it, not maybe sometimes even children of immigrants, but the immigrants themselves, they understand the value of where they're at now versus where they came from, and so they work every single day to keep that because they have the ability to work, which is something that they might not have had where they came from. So
Right.
these are important things.
The enthusiast had a really good point that just generally government solutions are, if you throw more money at it, then it'll be fixed, whether that's jail systems, not crime rates, various stuff. and that has been proven again and again and again to not work. And that's essentially all this is, well, we want everyone to live better, so we're going to throw money at it by having everyone's pay increased. But all that's going to do is that it's going to end with more people getting laid off or working less hours, etc. And
Yeah.
um, a better solution, instead of just throwing money at it by increasing the minimum wage, well, there's a great example that everyone's heard: give a man a fish, and he'll eat for a day; teach a man to fish and he'll be able to eat for the rest of his life. And that's kind of what this is. You can give everyone a $15 minimum wage, but they're going to work less. They're not going to be able to meet their needs. But if you reach out and you reach out to people that are poor and that have less money, and you teach them skills, which will put them into a skilled working class, or you do various other things to encourage them to get themselves out of poverty rather than just throwing money at it and hoping it helps, then that will actually be effective rather than just having a minimum wage that's a little bit higher.
Yeah, exactly. So continuing off what you said right there, America is a country that works and supports you, right? It supports you working for yourself. You can work for yourself. You can better yourself. You can help yourself. If you are a person who's generous, you want to generate to charities, go ahead, donate to charities, spend times in volunteer service, stuff like that. And the difference between that and another nation like a socialist nation or communist is that there's not a betterment to help you. It's a quote unquote betterment to help society over, except that in reality you don't really help society. You just help the corrupt few, elitists. But continuing off what you said, Sir Spencer. Oh man, I forgot what I was going to say. Dang, I know it was good too.
Teaching people to have various skills.
No, it was something else. Oh, well, it'll come back to me later, maybe. Go ahead and take me the message.
And also, one thing that I don't think they realize is for everyone that's making over $15, like let's say there's someone that's making 16, but they're struggling, or there's someone that's making 17, they're barely making it. This quote unquote like beneficial up on the minimum wage, they think it's going to help the people that are making minimum, but what it's going to do is after it helps them for about a week or two, the economy is going to do a 2008 quote unquote crash, and then once it gets back up, everything's going to be more expensive, and it's just going to be the same exact situation, and it screws over the people that are making 15 or above terribly. Like those people are just going to get put in worse situations, and it's going to be like their $15 or $16 is going to be equivalent to like $7.50 or $7.75. It's just they don't understand. They need to look more into it, even though they're the government. I shouldn't have to say that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a great example. Just the fact of raising the minimum, all that does is it lowers the purchasing power of all money, right? Instead of that's the sort of philosophy of bringing everyone else down to a specific level, and that way we're all closer to being equal. Sure, we're all more equal. We may be getting paid, closer to the same amount as each other, but we're all going to be living worse off because of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I was going to say now, I can't remember whether it was you, Spencer, or the enthusiast who said it, but the government would be paying the government. So maybe I think it was you that said the government solution to a lot of stuff is just to throw money at it. And the difference in the $15 minimum wage is that it's the government saying, because the government throws money at everything. This is the government saying that, oh, you're now going to throw money at this and hope that the solution to the problem gets fixed too. Because a $15 minimum wage isn't the government saying, oh, we're going to make sure that we, like, it's not saying if McDonald's pays $11 an hour to their employees, we're going to make up the other $4 an hour for you so that you can get your $15 an hour. No, a $15 minimum wage is saying that every company is going to be required to pay $15 an hour, whether or not they can afford it, and whether or not they will then go out of business from it. So this is the government saying, hey, we throw money at everything, but it's your turn now, so you're going to throw money at this problem and hope that it solves itself. And the people who are smart enough to know what the consequences are kind of like, actually, I don't really want to throw money at that because I don't want to go out of business. I kind of like what I've worked for, all the time, because a lot of people work 9 to 5 or more to create their business and maintain it. And it's, they put effort into this, and then a $15 minimum wage could unravel them in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that when they start out their business, they take no salary for themselves. They invest all their money in the company, and they take what they need to be able to survive, but they pay their employees first, right? I would say most business people in general, especially small business owners, are nice people who want to pay their employees as much as they possibly can. And so by putting it at a $15 minimum wage, you remove that you remove the ability for the employer to go, for the employer to do it out of the goodwill of their heart. And instead you say, you must do this no matter what. Even if they were already going to do it, it says, we're just forcing you to do this now.
Absolutely. Yep. It is 11 o'clock, guys. We're going to have to wrap it up soon here, so we'll try to speed through the last 2 messages real fast here.
Hey guys, This is Carlos. I'm originally from Mexico. I am now working in San Diego. I get paid $10 an hour, and I ain't got no problem with it, man. My job, I'm a male hooker, man. I get fucked in the ass, and I think that.
Yeah. Please keep it clean, man. That was a little too. That was definitely too explicit.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming to the country. We're glad that you're here. As long as you're legal.
Yep.
Okay, one more comment, guys, real quick.
Colson Herring, I'm going to have to chew you out for that comment. As somebody who studied politics for over 5 years and works in nonprofit, I cannot allow you to continue with this misnomer that poor people are lazy. You, as someone from an immigrant family, just as myself, know that immigrant families are some of the most hardworking people on the face of the earth. And this idea that poor people are lazy, whether they're immigrants or our own Americans, is dangerous, and you need to stop that rhetoric. Welfare isn't just a moral imperative. It's also a critical investment to the health and future of these kids from impoverished communities. Nobody has gotten rich off of welfare. The people that are lazy are the ones that find tax loopholes and use exploitation of labor to increase their wealth. Those are the people that's lazy. Please reconsider saying anything along those lines ever again.
I'll let you handle
so when
it.
So right after I said that, I did also say that I know immigrants, and I've seen like Mexicans who work really, really hard, the hardest working people, because they understand the value of being in this country. So thank you for pointing that out. But I do disagree with you when I say lazy. This is what I refer to is welfare. Okay, when you do some research on welfare and look at it from all the different bias sides of it and everything like that, and you'll see that there is actually a large number of people who are on welfare that shouldn't be on welfare. There's such a thing in this country as generational welfare, and it commonly exists in families that do not have welfare or do not need it anymore. Maybe in the first generation, the first person they needed it, whether it was disability or something else that fit the criteria of being able to get on welfare. Okay, when you say, and then let me continue that. When those people, they get on welfare and then their family just stays on it, okay? Because for the government, it's easier for them to continue paying welfare than to actually do anything that would help those people raise themselves out of impoverished conditions, because that's what welfare is. You don't live rich or like a king. Like you said, nobody who gets rich on living welfare. But I'm actually going to refute that, because no one who lives on welfare gets rich. But those who, but welfare does make some individuals rich. For instance, and here's what I mean by that: in Democrat-run cities like New Orleans, was that one city? Detroit. You got New York, San Francisco, cities like this, Democratic run, lots of poverty. lots of welfare going around, right? The Democrats that practically rule these countries. I'm going to say rule because that's really what they do. Rule these cities. They keep getting into office because people support their just help everybody kind of campaigns. When in reality, a swift kick in the rear is what some people need. So immigrants who come to the country who are poor, those people, I can't think of any situations where those just people are just like, I'm just going to send my butt and do nothing, get on U.S. welfare. Because I know I've actually met individuals who are first generation immigrants and have worked very hard. They work every hard of their day. They work hard to pay for themselves and for their families. And I have the utmost respect for them. What I don't have respect for is the individuals who live in poor conditions, and also poor, like we mentioned earlier, relative being to the rest of the world, who live on welfare, because welfare is something that is a very big issue in this country. People may say, oh, well, it's just, it's a smaller portion of the country, or it's not really that big, but actually it's a considerable portion of those who are impoverished, or quote unquote impoverished, that live in poorer conditions. And the way out of welfare and the way on to a betterment of society in America as a whole, is for these people to, like Spencer made the analogy a little bit ago, you can give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, or teach a man to fish and he'll eat for life. It's very simple. When you have people who are in generation welfare or even first-time welfare who do not deserve it, who are not actually people who are in need of welfare, which, I mean, there are actually doctors across the country, instances of those who have been tried and found liable for just giving welfare to individuals who are not actually deserving of it. They just kind of said, hey, I'm just going to write a check because, for whatever reason, maybe they were paid off or whatever. That's up for debate. That they have said, yes, okay, you're on welfare, boom, and then the government puts them on welfare. They make money every single day of their life. They get things like cable TV and an allowance every day. And I mean, a lot of these families are living with video game systems, like I said, cable TV. You ask me, welfare should be individually investigated by every person. So there should be like a doctor or maybe like a social worker, present there. So it's not going to be any kind of shifty crap going on. There should be investigations into individuals who are in generational welfare or even first-time welfare regularly to see what kind of welfare they're living in. Because if an individual is really unable to work, which is what welfare should be, then they are deserving of welfare, and then they can have more life comforts, like maybe the government pays for cable TV for these individuals that are unable, for whatever reason they're unable to work, and instead of just cutting them off and making them just have life-sustaining meals every day, they can have more comforts of life and comforts of the country. But then individuals who shouldn't be on welfare don't need welfare should be made unpleasant for them. It should be like life-sustaining meals. Cable TV, sorry, you need to get a job for that. You want to have an Xbox One gaming system? Sorry, you need to get a job for that. And this is a problem in the country because people see this and they go, oh, they're on welfare, we should support them. When in reality, a very large portion of individuals, or maybe I don't have the exact statistic, but a considerable portion of individuals who are welfare, especially in democratic cities, are on generational welfare or should not be on welfare at all. These individuals are those who would rather not work. That's what I refer to as lazy. Okay, the U.S. is a country built from the ground up to give everyone opportunity. And if you want wealth, you want to have a comfortable life, you want to do better, all you have to do is work for it. Real quick here, one second. Is this last comment yours, enthusiast?
Let me add my thoughts in here real quick. I kind of line up in between you two. I think that welfare should be something evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And I don't have statistics, so I can't say a majority or a minority. I know that a portion of people that are on welfare are taking it when they don't need it. But I think welfare in several instances is completely necessary, especially for people who have physical or medical disabilities where they literally either can't work or are not able to work for extended periods of time. I think those people are the people that should absolutely be on welfare, because if they had the ability to work, they would. I think that there are some people that take advantage of the welfare system in order to not work and just use it as a way to get quote unquote free money. I know a lot of people on welfare are kind of halfway between those, where they are not a medical absolute necessity on welfare, but they're also not lazy. They just, are in a rough spot or various things. So I'm kind of halfway between you two in my opinion of it. I think that largely what my opinion comes down to is that welfare should be evaluated on a case by case basis, and then reevaluated every certain while to see whether people are still taking advantage of it or whether a medical condition has gone away, etc. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you. Spencer, it should be evaluated on a case by case basis. Those who are deserving of it should have it, because we're a good society. We want to support people who are unable to work, but those who don't need it, they're dragging down the whole country. And I do have to say, there's a couple instances of individuals, or maybe not that I know of, but I've heard of, on news or whatever like that, who are on welfare or they're living like that, and they are commonly very outspoken leftists. Higher welfare, more money, higher minimum wage, yada 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 yada, crap like that. And those people are creating issues like this $15 minimum wage issue that we have now, where they are pushing an ideal that is actually going to hurt everybody. And you have politicians just following along for one of the four reasons that we talked about earlier, where they're actually creating an issue. And I think our entire listener base actually just disappeared after we were talking about that. I think everybody left.
All right.
Well, I guess that's a good time anyway, because we're already heading out.
Yeah, let's take this message.
Yep.
I do not necessarily think that poor people are lazy. However, I worked with a gal who lived in an apartment complex, and she worked her butt off for 8 to 10 hours every day and was very upset because people in her apartment complex were receiving welfare and sitting out at the pool having parties every single day. Those people were lazy. Not all poor people are, but there are lazy poor people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are individuals. I mean, like I talked about earlier, the immigrants they work, 2 jobs to support their family. There are other people who do that same kind of thing, and you would think, oh, that he works 2 jobs. Obviously, he's not working. He's not living too bad off. But there are several instances of individuals who work 2 jobs or sometimes more, or do various different things, and they're unable to raise themselves out of impoverished conditions. And I have the utmost respect for those people. Like I've said, I've already said that before. What I don't have respect for is the individuals who may claim to be, or who are actually in the quote unquote poor, low class, and they live, whether it's welfare or a couple of different things, that do not care to raise themselves out. But commonly, these people that do not care to raise themselves out of welfare are the people who are outspoken, leftists and stuff like that. They're in the rallies, they're in the protests, they're in the parties, and it seems like they're living the life that an individual who works every day in their life as hard as they can, those people should have. So there's a lot of nuance in the terms of poor. It's really an individual basis. Okay, it's really like general assumptions about them is hard. So I apologize earlier for if anyone who was thinking I was referring to all poor people as lazy. What I'm actually saying is that it really is difficult, because there's a lot of nuance in an individual basis, right? There's people who work hard every day, and you would expect that they would do better, but they aren't. And there's various reasons why they may not be, or maybe there's no reason at all. It's just how it is. It's really, really complicated on an individual basis. But the bottom line is about today's episode: $15 minimum wage is bad. Just nothing good can come from that. no good can be helped from that. We have 2 more messages. Spencer, do you want to listen to these and not respond just so we can get them in before we head off?
Play them both and then give our last thoughts related to them and the episode overall.
Okay, sounds good to me.
I want it noted that I work with nonprofits that deal with this on a daily basis, that deal with poverty, that deal with marginalized communities, and that deal with abuse. And that type of rhetoric that you are saying, poor people are lazy, is toxic, and it is completely unfounded. It is known that countries that attribute people who are poor with laziness are less generous in their welfare systems. And if people do abuse the welfare system, that is a case of fraud. But the fraudulent is not the majority in the welfare system. Also, again, the real welfare queens and kings are the rich people that take advantage of these welfare programs for themselves and are already rich.
There you go. She had some
So
good points.
I've already, yeah, you have good points, but I mean, I've already said before that when you say I'm creating a toxic thing, but the poor people are lazy, I've covered it, I think, 4 times now. That's not what I'm saying. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that. I'll get another message in while we're listening to that.
All right.
Hey guys, this is Ricardo. I'm living in South Beach at the minute. I just want to call you guys up and say, do you guys want to come out and like get a drink? Because I'd really like to fuck one of you guys in the ass.
Yeah, please don't. And a couple people not being very clean in here today, guys.
Yep. All right. We'll do this last one.
I also want to note that you guys are both currently my favorite conservative thinkers on this app. So even though I'm hard on you guys, I appreciate what you guys are doing. Have a blessed day.
Oh, thank you.
Have a blessed day yourself. I appreciate being hard because that means you're being honest.
Yeah, I appreciate. I'm glad that we have something of value that you think you're willing to listen to us. And yeah, please continue to be hard. If there is something that you disagree with us, please continue talking about it because you've brought up some good points that I honestly didn't think about. I think I have changed my mind slightly on this issue. I never thought that all poor people were lazy, or that most people on welfare were taking advantage. But I think I have in my mind lowered the percentage that were taking advantage of it. I think in my mind I had it at a higher percentage than it seems like it was. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with Spencer there. You have some really good points, and thank you for coming on. People who have different opinions and what generates debate, and that's what makes this whole show worth doing, because otherwise it's just me and Spencer preaching at you guys for an hour or 2 hours. And that's not fun at all. Especially when COVID and listening to YouTube or whatever like that. I've heard lots of people talking. I wanted to have something that was, me and Spencer both wanted to have something that was more of a conversation. And yeah, thank you, enthusiasts. I have to say you've provided some really good points. I have to agree with Spencer. I thought the number was higher. I guess I can probably do some looking at that, although I'm guessing there's probably not a lot of clear statistics on that. But yeah, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you everyone for being on here today. Thank you for those of you that kept it clean.
Yeah, thank you.
Minus the other 2 guys that left unclean comments. But thank you for keeping it smart, keeping it clean. And yeah, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, we love it.
My name is Colson.
My name is Spencer, and we're 18 and American.
We're signing off. We'll see you guys later.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for coming.
Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.